Life was not extraordinary, but it was ours. My husband, James, and I had been married for 8 years. We had a modest home, a small but steady savings account, and a routine that felt comforting. James worked as a mid-level manager in a growing tech company, and I handled freelance design work from home while taking care of our 6-year-old daughter, Emma. James often talked about his dream of becoming a director at his company, a goal he pursued with relentless ambition. I supported him wholeheartedly. Late nights at the office, I made sure dinner was ready when he returned. Weekend networking events, I juggled Emma's schedule so he could attend. James was the provider, the head of the family, or so I thought. One evening, James came home earlier than usual, an excited glint in his eye. "Big things are happening, honey," he said, kissing my forehead. "This might finally be our break." I smiled at him, feeling his enthusiasm radiate through the room. "Our break?" I teased. He nodded. "Yeah, our break. Once this next step goes through, we'll be set for life." Though he didn't share many details, I assumed it was another career opportunity. I had no reason to doubt him. James was a man who worked hard for everything he had. I trusted him completely. The first sign of trouble came a few weeks later. James started receiving strange phone calls late at night. He'd step outside to answer them, his voice low and tense. When I asked, he brushed it off as work stress and assured me that everything was fine. Soon after, I noticed other changes. James became irritable, snapping over minor things like misplaced keys or a delayed dinner. Our once happy home grew quieter, the tension so thick it felt like walking on eggshells. One afternoon, Emma brought me the mail, her tiny hands clutching a thick envelope. "Mommy, this looks important," she said, her big blue eyes watching as I opened it. It was a letter from the bank, addressed to me. The words blurred together in a haze of disbelief as I read the contents. Loan confirmation, $1 million approved under the name of Claire Wilson. My heart pounded. I'd never applied for such a loan. Why would I? We didn't need $1 million, and even if we did, I certainly wouldn't take it out without a discussion. I stormed into the living room, clutching the letter. "James," I called, my voice shaking. He appeared in the doorway, his face pale as he saw the paper in my hand. "What's this?" I demanded. He hesitated, then sighed heavily. It's for us, Claire, for the future." I had to take the loan to invest in something big. Without telling me? I shot back, anger bubbling to the surface. "You put my name on this without even asking?" James looked away, avoiding my gaze. "It's complicated. Trust me, it'll pay off. You won't have to worry about a thing." But I couldn't shake the unease. Something about his explanation didn't add up. The way he avoided eye contact, the evasiveness in his tone, it wasn't like him. In the days that followed, the weight of that loan pressed down on me like a storm cloud. I tried to dig deeper, asking James more questions, but his answers grew curt and dismissive. Then, one evening, I overheard a conversation that shattered my world. James was in his office, talking on the phone. I paused outside the door, the sound of his voice sharp and agitated. "No, I told you, she doesn't know the whole story yet," he hissed. I had to use her name. My credit wouldn't have been enough. "Just give me more time." My stomach churned. James had lied to me about everything. Not only had he taken out a massive loan without my knowledge, but he'd also done it because his own finances were in shambles. He was using me as his scapegoat. That night, I confronted him. "I heard you," I said, standing in the kitchen while he poured himself a drink. He froze, his hand tightening around the glass. "Heard what?" "The phone call. You lied to me, James. You're in debt, aren't you? That loan wasn't for us. It was to cover your mistakes." James turned to face me, his expression hardening. "Claire, you don't understand how business works. I had no choice." "You had a choice," I snapped. "You could have told me the truth instead of dragging me into your mess." His response was chilling. "Don't make this a bigger deal than it needs to be," he said coldly. "You'll thank me when everything works out." But I couldn't just brush it aside. That night, as I lay awake, I realized the man I thought I knew, the man I trusted, had betrayed me in the worst possible way. In the days after confronting James, the air between us grew colder. Every glance, every word, was laced with tension. My trust in him, once unshakable, now felt like a fragile thread ready to snap. But I didn't have the luxury to dwell on emotions. I had to act. The loan was in my name, and if James's so-called plan fell apart, I'd be the one left to deal with the fallout. One morning, while James was at work, I decided to investigate. I sifted through his desk drawers and filing cabinets, looking for any clue about what he'd gotten us into. At first, all I found were old bills and office supplies. Then, Tucked away in the back of a drawer, I discovered a folder marked private. Inside were documents that made my heart sink. Bank statements showed staggering withdrawals from our savings, money I'd assumed was still there. Worse, there were contracts for what appeared to be a risky business investment. The terms were clear: if the venture failed, the entire debt would fall on me. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages. James hadn't just lied, he'd gambled with our future. That evening, I waited for James to come home, the folder sitting on the coffee table like a bomb waiting to explode. When he walked through the door, his face hardened the moment he saw it. "What's this, James?" I demanded, my voice steady but laced with anger. "When were you planning to tell me you emptied our savings and tied me to your failed business scheme?" He rubbed his temples, his frustration evident. "Claire, I told you, I'm fixing everything. You don't understand how these things work." "Don't patronize me," I snapped, my voice breaking. "You put us at risk, James. You put Emma at risk. How could you do this to your family?" His expression shifted to something colder, almost dismissive. "I didn't think you'd get it," he said, turning away. "You're always so focused on playing it safe." The word stung. Was that how he saw me? As some obstacle to his ambitions? Over the next few weeks, things only got worse. James spent more and more time away from home, claiming he was handling the situation, but I wasn't convinced. His evasiveness, his growing distance, it felt like he was slipping away entirely. One evening, I overheard another phone call. This time, James wasn't hiding his tone of desperation. "I don't care what it takes," he said, his voice cracking. "I need more time, just don't let it get back to her." Who was he talking to, and what was he so afraid I'd find out? The breaking point came when a stranger showed up at our door. He was a sharply dressed man, carrying a briefcase and wearing an expression that was all business. "Mrs. Wilson?" he asked. "Yes? I'm here on behalf of Mr. Thompson. He's concerned about the delays in your loan payments and wanted to ensure you were aware of the terms." The blood drained from my face. "What delays?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The man frowned, flipping through his papers. "Your payments are already 2 months overdue. If they're not resolved soon, the matter will escalate to legal proceedings." I stood there, stunned. James hadn't just lied, he'd been defaulting on the loan while pretending everything was under control. That night, when James finally came home, I was waiting for him, the weight of the stranger's words pressing down on me like a vice. "Who's Mr. Thompson?" I asked, my tone icy. James froze, his face pale. "Why are you asking about him?" "Because his representative came by today. Apparently, my loan is overdue. Care to explain?" He sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair. "Claire, I didn't want to worry you. I'm working on it." "Stop lying," I shouted, my voice echoing through the house. "You've been lying to me for months, James. I don't even know who you are anymore." For the first time, he looked genuinely defeated. "I didn't mean for it to get this bad," he admitted, his voice barely audible. "I thought I could fix it before you found out." But his confession did little to ease the storm inside me. James had betrayed my trust, jeopardized our future, and dragged me into a mess I hadn't asked for. That night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I realized I couldn't rely on James to fix this. If I wanted to protect Emma and myself, I'd have to take matters into my own hands. Little did I know, my decision would set off a chain of events that would change everything. The morning after my confrontation with James, I woke up with a sense of resolve I hadn't felt in months. I wasn't going to sit around and let this disaster spiral further out of control. Emma and I deserved better. If James couldn't or wouldn't fix things, I would. I started by calling the loan officer. "Mr. Thompson, I needed answers, and I wasn't going to rely on James's evasions anymore." "Mrs. Wilson," Mr. Thompson said when I reached him. "It's unusual for us to hear directly from clients in this situation. Your husband has been the one managing the account." "Well, I'm managing it now," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Can you send me the full details of the loan agreement and any outstanding payments?" He hesitated for a moment. "Of course, but I must warn you, some of the terms your husband agreed to are quite steep." When the documents arrived later that day, I could hardly believe what I was reading. The interest rate alone was astronomical, and the penalties for defaulting were even worse. James had effectively tied us to a financial noose. I spent the next few days combing through every piece of paperwork, trying to find a way out. At the same time, I started researching local legal aid and financial advisors. I was determined to find someone who could help me untangle this mess. That's when I came across the name of a lawyer who specialized in cases like mine. Her name was Margaret Hayes, and she had a reputation for being relentless in protecting her clients. I made an appointment and walked into her office, with all my documents in hand. Margaret was a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her early 40s, with an air of confidence that immediately put me at ease. "Let me get this straight," she said after reviewing the papers. "Your husband took out this loan in your name without fully disclosing the terms to you?" "Yes," I said, feeling a mix of anger and shame. I didn't know what I was signing. "He said it was for us, our family." She nodded thoughtfully. "It's not uncommon for people to trust their spouses implicitly. But this is serious. The terms are predatory, and if we can prove you were misled, there may be a way to challenge this legally." Her words were a lifeline, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a sliver of hope. While Margaret worked on the legal front, I threw myself into finding a way to bring in extra income. I had left my job years ago to focus on raising Emma, but now, desperate times called for desperate measures. I started applying to every job I could find, from administrative positions to part-time retail work. Rejection after rejection came in, each one a blow to my already fragile confidence. One day, after yet another fruitless job hunt, I sat on a park bench with Emma. She played on the swings, blissfully unaware of the storm raging around us. Watching her laugh and squeal as she soared higher, I felt a pang of guilt. She deserved stability, happiness, things I wasn't sure I could give her anymore. That's when I noticed a familiar face across the park. It was Sarah, an old friend I hadn't seen in years. We'd drifted apart after high school, but back then, she'd always been the one to dream big. "Claire," she said, approaching with a look of surprise, "is that you?" I nodded, forcing a smile. "It's been a long time, Sarah." We spent the next hour catching up. When I told her about my struggles, she listened intently. "You know," she said, "I just started working at a new company. They're always looking for reliable people, and I could put in a good word for you." It felt like fate. Sarah gave me the details, and by the end of the week, I had an interview lined up. The job wasn't glamorous, it was an entry-level administrative role, but it was something. The office was bustling, and the pace was demanding, but I threw myself into the work with everything I had. One day, as I was sorting through a stack of paperwork, I overheard two senior managers talking about a major upcoming project. They were brainstorming ideas, but seemed stuck. "Excuse me," I said, hesitantly interrupting. "I couldn't help but overhear. Maybe you could try this approach?" They looked at me with surprise, but one of them nodded. "That's actually a great idea," he said. From that day on, they began to notice me. Slowly but surely, I started earning their trust and respect. Meanwhile, Margaret called with good news. "We filed a formal complaint about the loan," she said. "If this goes to court, there's a strong chance we can argue that the agreement was predatory. It wasn't a guarantee, but it was progress." And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had some control over my life again. But just as things were starting to look up, James threw another curveball. One evening, he came home with an announcement that left me speechless. "I've decided to sell the house," he said casually, as if it were no big deal. "What?" I said, my voice rising. "You can't just decide that on your own, James. This is our home, it's not up for debate," he said coldly. "We need the money, and this is the only way." His words felt like a slap in the face. Selling the house meant uprooting Emma, destroying the one stable thing she had left. That night, as I sat in the empty living room, I realized that James wasn't going to stop. If I wanted to protect Emma and myself, I'd have to find a way to stand up to him once and for all.